A research firm caught up in the Russia election probe now accuses Republicans of working to mislead the public. Fusion GPS commissioned the so-called Steele dossier, unverified intelligence on President Trump's Russian ties, using money from a conservative website and Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign.
In this morning's New York Times, two of Fusion's GPS founders claim the president's allies in Congress are running a fake inquiry. They say the GOP, quote, sought to tarnish our firm to punish us for highlighting his links to Russia. They want Congress to, quote, release transcripts of our firm's testimony so that the American people can learn the truth about our work. CBS News contributor Ed O'Keefe is a congressional reporter for The Washington Post. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, first, remind everybody what Fusion GPS is and their involvement.
They're basically former journalists turned investigators who got hired during the presidential campaign, first by a conservative news outlet, then by the Hillary Clinton campaign, to look into Donald Trump and try to dig up some dirt.
The suggestion had been by Republicans and the president that something that the Democrats, some opposition research, is what led to this idea of collusion. They're saying that's not true.
Exactly. And what they're saying, too, is that, you know, if anything, the work they were doing may have verified some things the FBI was looking into and sparked the whole thing, but not necessarily the collusion, and that dossier, the so-called dossier of the dirt and things, the gossip that he may or may not have been doing when he was visiting Russia a few years ago, was not the basis.
What are they suggesting that the Republicans are not looking into?
The president's business dealings, basically, and some other aspects of the potential Russian attempts to influence the election. They're asking the congressional committees they've talked to release their full transcripts and say, look, once you do, you're going to realize that there's a lot more here, and that in some cases these committees are avoiding certain subjects.
We have multiple investigations going on. Is there any sense that they can conclude in a bipartisan fashion?
Well, the one that's doing the best at that is the one being led by the Senate Intelligence Committee. Richard Burr, the Republican chairman from North Carolina, and Mark Warner from Virginia. It's seen as the most robust, by many the most credible congressional investigation. But remember, all that one is looking into is the scope of potential Russian interference or collusion or whatever else, in an attempt to sort of educate the public and Congress about what may have been done, what could be done in the future, and what needs to be done to avoid it. So it'll be interesting, but it's not necessarily going to be something that leads to other political retribution.
Congress has just a few things on their plate as they try to get something done this year. January 19th and March 5th are two big deadline dates. Why?
They're connected to each other. January 19th is the next time we may or may not have a shutdown. Getting old and kind of tired to talk about this, but that's the next spending deadline. And part of those negotiations involve whether or not or how to resolve the issue of DACA, that program that protects about 700,000 immigrants who were brought here as children. If it isn't resolved by then, the date to watch is March 5th. That's the current deadline for the program. The president set the deadline in September, telling Congress, you figure this out, bring it to me, and we'll cut a deal. Everyone seems to want to resolve the DACA issue, either give them permanent status or figure out some other solution. The question is, what's the compromise with that? Even the president has said, I don't want to be the guy that is responsible for deporting so many people. But, you know, the negotiation will be either, do you put up more money for a border wall? Do you make changes to chain migration or something else? And nobody wants to put that on the table, because the moment that ends up there, it becomes the center of debate and could lead to a lot of different consequences.
Well, something may also influence the president's agenda in the future is the Republican makeup of the Senate. Now that we know that Orrin Hatch is retiring, Mitt Romney wants to run for a seat. If Mitt Romney runs, will he likely win? Will he face other opposition?
He'd have at least one Republican primary challenger and a Democrat who isn't polling well right now. So, you know, it's only, what, January 3rd? Long year ahead. It could happen.
Safe to say Mitt Romney won't be a rubber stamp for President Trump.
Not at all. And what it could potentially create really is another poll right there in the Senate of the sort of never Trump or establishment Republican movement.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much, as always.
See you guys.